and beyond. I think we went over this.
Good job. Yeah, so I guess I'll start. This is just kind of our outline so you know what we're going to talk about today. We'll begin with why containers and what the benefit of them are, and then just kind of how to be successful with it. So just talking about different kinds of containers that there are, what growing medium that you put in the containers to grow in, caring for them, watering, fertilizing, and then pest and disease management. We'll go over real quick at the end. Not real quick, but quickly at the end. And then at the end of that, we'll have time for questions. So you can ask questions throughout, or if you want to wait till the end, that's fine also. So, I guess.
And you know, it might be really good, Hope, to just kind of describe the Build a Garden program.
Yeah.
Because the whole reason why we're doing this workshop is because of this exciting new program that's bringing containers to a household near you.
Yes. So this is a new program to us that we started in the spring of last year. And it's called Build a Garden. I have a slide at the end with a link if anyone's interested. But it's where we provide folks with either a raised bed for their backyard or up to 10 of these grow bags. You can see right here. I know, Sarah, you applied. And so that's where people can apply. Yep. And it's donation based. So you can pay a little bit, you can pay nothing. And that's for folks that maybe necessarily can't get to a community garden or can't get in a community garden, or don't have a lot of space, which is where the grow bags come in. So the garden beds, that application is closed for the season and it'll reopen in the fall. But we did reopen the garden bag applications. I have a link for that at the end of the slideshow. So I'll share that with you all. And if you have any questions about it then. But that is kind of why we are talking about containers today. And just because it's a great way to grow when you don't have a lot of space. But so there's a little plug for Build a Garden. And then just talking about why growing in containers is awesome. Like I mentioned, they're portable. A lot of times, unless they're too heavy, but most times they can be portable, which is really nice. You don't have to have a lot of space. You don't need a yard necessarily. So that's really nice if you're renting. You don't need to till the soil because it's such a small spot. And you can also, Binghamton, I know, has a big problem with lead in the soil. So that's really nice when you have containers because you can bring the growing medium from an outside source. It doesn't have to be that crappy clay soil that I know a lot of us are familiar with. And like I said, they can be moved. They're beautiful. And you can also grow your own food. So there's quite a few positives to growing in containers. I think it's a really nice place to start also if you're just beginning. So yeah, that's kind of why we like containers.
Start and grow modularly.
Yep.
Organically. Yeah, and if you're at all concerned about lead being in your soil here in Binghamton or Endicott or Johnson City, which unfortunately there is a pretty high risk of, you can get a free lead soil test through Vines. Go to vinesgardens.org/soil tests, and you can register to get a free soil test. And it happens to test for nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus and pH as well. So you kind of get a 4-for-1 with that. Why is this not going to the next page?
There we go. I can do this. So we kind of split this up into the 3 pillars of success for container gardening. There's 3 things that you really have to keep in mind. The right container, which can be a lot of different things. The right potting mix, which we'll go over, and the right location, which we'll also go over. You need to have a sunny, nice spot.
So, you know, you can be outside the box about what kind of containers you choose to grow in. What's important is that you really want to make sure that you have enough grow space for the roots of your plants. So, of course, we have, as you can see, our beautiful grow bags. You'll see them in the upper left-hand corner here. And what's great about these is that they're collapsible, they're lightweight, and as Hope pointed out, you can move them from place to place. So if you only have a narrow area that gets 6 hours of sun per day, and you notice that it moves over the course of the season, well, you can move your containers to follow the sun. You can also use plastic. In the center here, I've got a photo actually from Butajira, Ethiopia, where I used to work. This is a photo of an avocado nursery at one of our partner farmers. And what he literally did was he just took plastic bags, actually plastic tubes. You melt the bottom of the tube, you've got a grow bag, right? So you can plant in plastic bags if you're ambitious. You've got a shoe tree that somebody upgraded, upcycled into a hanging vertical garden. You can also use regular old containers that you would get at Kavaric Hardware or Home Depot. You can get creative with sneakers and bicycles and old furniture. Sky's the limit. But there are a few different factors that you need to think about when you're choosing a container. So you want to choose a container that's large enough to allow for a full year's worth of root growth. So I put here in this handy chart, which you also should have received in the email, how much space or what size container you need for different kinds of crops. So for leafy vegetables and herbs, you'd want a 1 to 2 size gallon container, right? So think about what a gallon of milk looks like. Think of 2 gallons of milk. That's what you want.
This is a 7-gallon bag. It's kind of hard to see, but it holds 7 gallons of soil.
Wow. So a 7-gallon container would be really perfect for our flowering vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, and Brussels sprouts. That's a good size. And then for long season vegetables like cucumbers or tomatoes, which we have a lot of at the urban farm, this is like at the bottom end of what you would grow a tomato plant in.
Yep.
But if you're doing like an heirloom variety or a cherry tomato variety, this is perfect.
Yep. And that usually it's nice because if you want to start small too, these are usually good if you have a bigger plant, say like a tomato or a pepper plant. They're good for just one, usually one, because the tomato plants and stuff get pretty big.
If you get ambitious and you want to do something like a fruit tree, you're going to need a way bigger container. So maybe graduate to that later in your container gardening journey. As far as like grouping plants like strawberries or bush beans or peas, which are really easy to start with, basically any size container will work. You just need to make sure that you're planting at the appropriate spacing for that particular plant size. So when you look at the seed packet and it says on the back that you need to be spacing your bush beans, let's say 12 inches apart, you want to respect that when you're planting that in your container.
Yeah, so like Christina mentioned, choosing the right size container is really important. That chart she had is really helpful. This picture on the right is an example of a plant getting root bound. A lot of things, I'm sure we've all seen this. If you leave something in a small container for too long, the roots start to grow in a circle instead of straight down. And that stresses the plant out and it makes it more susceptible to disease. So I think the best is to always go bigger than you think you need. That's just a really safe bet. And if you have a bigger container, you have more soil volume. So it'll absorb water better and it'll keep the water better. So you don't have to water as much. You just have to make sure you fully water. That's really important. We'll go over watering, but it's one thing to think about.
Another important thing that people don't think about is that you need to have drainage. If you don't put holes in the bottom of your container, when you water, you're going to see water collect in the bottom of that container, and that's going to encourage anaerobic bacteria. These are bacteria that thrive under conditions where there's not enough oxygen. And then that can cause all kinds of plant diseases like anthracnose or root rot. So you really want to make sure that you make proper holes for drainage at the bottom of your containers. So you can use different kinds of drills. I tried to put photos on here. So you can use a drill with a masonry bit. You see with that kind of angle there. If you're not doing a grow bag, you can actually drill holes in the bottom of your terracotta container. You can also use a drill or a spade with a twist bit. If you're using like an old tin, an old bean can or something like that, you can take a hammer and a nail and poke holes in there. And just be aware if you're screwing through plastic, make sure you use the right kind of drill bit for it. And if you're not sure, ask your hardware specialist at Kavaric or a big box store to give you support. Now, a new piece of information that's coming out, when I went through my horticulture training, they said it was really important to make sure that you had some sort of expanded volcanic rock or gravel at the bottom of your containers. Now evidence is coming out that that's not actually necessary, that it actually causes more problems than it solves. So don't worry about putting any kind of drainage at the bottom of your container. Just make sure that you've got holes on the bottom to allow water to flow out or to allow water to flow in if you're doing bottom watering.
It's also nice to, we'll talk about the mixture that we use, but adding the perlite into the mixture. The perlite is the puffy stuff that kind of looks like styrofoam. It's nice to mix that inside with the compost and with the soil. So this is our growing medium. This is not necessarily what you have to do, but this is what we use at Vines for our grow bags. We do create a large volume of them all at once. So this might work better for that. You can always, if it's easier for you to buy a bag at the store, do that. Just make sure, one thing to look for is to make sure it's pretty light. So it will be better for drainage, aeration, and growth of the plant roots. And a lot of times it's interesting. I learned this a couple years ago, but a lot of good potting mix for these grow bags doesn't have soil in it at all. It's mostly compost. We use perlite, like I mentioned, peat moss, and then a scoop of lime, which is really good for the nutrients of the plant. But this is kind of the formula we use. But like I said, this is not the main answer. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. But the main thing I would recommend is that it has a lot of compost in it and that it's a lighter medium. Do you have anything to add to that?
I mean, the only thing I would think about is that if, let's say, you're gardening on a patio or a rooftop, I've heard some disaster stories of people planting in containers using regular soil. And, depending on the scale you're working on, these roofs are engineered but not for that amount of weight bearing. And so there have been situations where people's patios or roofs have collapsed. That's why it's so important to be using a soilless potting mix as opposed to, just regular garden soil like you would use in a regular garden bed.
And that makes it easier for you to move too, because it's lighter, which is always nice. So the best location is also really important. We say, I think it's considered full sun if it gets at least 6 hours of direct sunlight all day. So that's usually, the best spot is usually to the south of buildings, trees, other tall things. And you want to make sure a lot of things it's nice to not put it under something because it will get more sun, and if it rains, it'll get water. So it's also nice to put it somewhere that you walk by a lot, because then you remember it and you get to enjoy it more. And like I mentioned, an area that gets sun most of the day is really nice, especially for your hot weather crops like tomatoes, peppers, things like that. Partial shade is okay for some colder weather crops like lettuce and spinach, greens, a lot of time. But if you have tomatoes or peppers, you really need full sun. Another thing to think about too is being close to a source of water. If you have to fill up containers and bring water out, say a watering can, it's nice that it's not too far from where you have to go, or if it's close to your hose, if you have a hose. So just thinking about where you put them is really important. Sorry, it's your job. So this is a really nice diagram. This shows the different cardinal directions and then where's the best place, depending on which way your house is facing. So you can always switch it around, thinking about which way your house is facing. But as you can see, the south side is really, really the best side, because it gets the best sun. And this shows, if you look at the different shades of green, the northern side is pretty shady most often, so it's not the best spot. Then some partial sun's okay, like I said, for certain crops. But this is a really nice chart.
Yeah, I like it.
I do too. I think Amelia made it. Watering your container, another important thing. A lot of reasons why containers fail is because they're either watered too much or watered too little. So you really got to find the happy medium. A good way to do it is to let the growing medium dry out a bit before you water again. Not to the point where your plant is like shriveled up and dying, but to the point where you could stick your finger in and like about an inch or so down, it's dry. It's a good time to water. Another important thing is to water thoroughly. So if you actually, you want to make sure you soak it, basically, so it goes throughout the whole container. You can always set a reminder on your phone. That's one good way to remember. You can also use a rain gauge if you wanted, because then you can determine exactly how much water your plant is getting. Another important tip too is to actually water the growing medium and not the plant. If you water the plant directly, that they're more susceptible to disease because they're always wet. And also you can burn the plant if you water it in the hot sun. Put water directly on the plant, the sun will burn it.
It's like steamed vegetables.
Yes, yeah,
but
not
unplanned.
the kind we want. Yeah.
You know, the other thing that I really like to do is I like to do bottom watering.
Oh yeah.
You'll see like when people have not so much for a grow bag or a fabric container, but if you have like a plastic or terracotta container with your drainage holes on the bottom, a lot of people like to put a dish underneath. And what you do is you fill water in the dish and then it percolates through the holes on the bottom of your container. And that's really good because then the roots are actually kind of growing deeper and more robustly towards the bottom. Sometimes when you're watering from on top, it looks wetter than it is.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're pouring water on top, you touch it and you say, oh, that's wet. And you think that there's water all the way at the bottom of the container. But if you do it the other way, if you put a dish underneath and you water the dish, then you know the water is going to soak up. It's going to hit the deep roots first. And when you touch it and it's wet on the surface, then you know it's been thoroughly watered.
Yep.
So that's another way to do it. And then you know for sure that you're not getting water on your plant.
Yep. That's a nice way. I do that with my house plants at home, and then they take up water when they want and need the water. And you kind of just can not forget about it, but it does it on its own. You just have to fill up the dish. It's pretty nice. Nice way to do it.
Hope and Christina, we have a question in the chat.
Yeah.
Sherry asks, don't you water until it comes out the bottom?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Like if I'm not regulating myself, you know, I try not to do that.
A lot of times if the water is coming out of the bottom, especially right away, it means that the plant is really dry. So that might not be a great indicator.
I feel like I'm always getting yelled at when that happens.
Yeah.
Right? Like it makes a mess on your patio or inside your house if you're growing indoors. I mean, that's a sign of overwatering. And like really gradual watering is better too. Right? You can have the situation where you dump a whole bunch of water on a plant, stuff flows out the bottom, but you haven't actually soaked the growing medium.
Yeah.
Right? So it's actually better to kind of water slowly and patiently.
Yeah. And that's what's nice about the bottom up method too. You don't make as much of a mess, which I'm pretty good at. Especially with houseplants can get pretty messy too when they're inside. So yeah.
So Jude has a question and she asks, can you bottom water a grow bag?
No. So grow bags, since they're fabric, they drain through the fabric. They don't necessarily have holes in them. And so they won't suck up water as well. And since it's like a fabric, they might get like wet and gross kind of, because they're not hard like plastic, which will just not get moldy and weird.
I mean, like, I think like you could,
You could.
right? Like in
Yeah.
a hydroponic kind of situation, people might be growing in baskets like this.
Yeah, that's true.
I feel like it's messy.
Yeah.
I think it is better to top water if you're using a grow bag.
I agree with that.
But experiment.
Yeah.
Speaking of containers, you want to be smart about which containers you choose to upcycle. You can totally use like anything that's a food grade container.
Like those big buckets of like icing or something that you would get from a bakery.
Mm-hmm.
Those are nice.
Yeah, or Kikkoman soy sauce, as I heard the other day.
Yeah.
Any kind of food grade container is great. Using containers, like sometimes I see like Pinterest designs where people are using like an old paint can, or I mean, I had a situation in another country where somebody served me dinner and they offered me salt and pepper, and they were old pesticide containers. So like really just think about what used to be in this container, and do you really want to be growing food out of it? Try to stick with food grade containers only. For fertilizing your container garden, now this is a little bit more challenging with containers. When you're growing in the ground, the roots have a lot more freedom to kind of search for nutrients and find them when they need them. In a container, you need to be a little more hands-on about making sure that all the nutrients are available. So just like Hope pointed out, you want to feed the soil, and then the soil feeds the plants. Best thing to do is to top dress with compost. If you're on a rooftop where, or patio, and you might not be able to add tons of compost all the time, you can add an aerated compost tea. Now, some people get fancy with this. You can get a $12, air bubbler at Walmart, let's say, like for a fish tank. You can take some vines compost, put it in a Kikkoman bucket, and just keep it bubbling all the time. If that's not your style, you can also take compost and just hand stir it. In places where there's not electricity, you just have somebody that just stirs it, with the vortex and against the vortex. You do 100 stirs one way, 100 stirs the other way, and then apply it that way. You want to avoid applying any kind of fertilizers, even quote unquote natural ones, when you're growing in containers.
Yeah.
It's just really hard to control.
Yeah, it's really concentrated.
What you're applying. If you do want to apply some kind of fertilizer like Dr. Earth's or Brian's Organics, Brad's Organics, you can do that. But really just like once a season, really.
And compost really a lot of times in containers does what you need.
You can experiment with using liquid seaweed or fish emulsion, not just as a soil drench, but you can apply it as a foliar spray. You put it in a spray bottle and you just spray the leaves every couple weeks. The plants do absorb nutrients through the leaves as well, not only the roots. But again, you don't need to, I wouldn't overthink it. You don't want to, too much fertilizer is a problem, and there's a bigger danger of that happening than not having enough, especially if you're growing annual plants in containers. But compost tea or just a top dress of compost, putting a handful of finished compost at the base of your plant once a season is a nice idea. Designing your container garden. So if you're thinking about growing containers, they might as well be beautiful, right? So a lot of people use this concept of thrill, fill, and spill. I'm a little less familiar with ornamental plants and more familiar with vegetable plants. But the idea is that you have something that's a focal point in the middle of your container. It could be something that's spiky, like a grass. That could be like a focal point. Something that fills, could be some kind of bush bean or thyme or something like that. And then something that overflows. And then you really get a beautiful ornamental look to your container. uh, focusing more food focused, is it okay if I
Yeah,
present
these are
this
your
since I
slides.
well I
Yep.
made you were supposed to do this slide and I made it by accident. So
She was excited.
yeah, I was, or just not paying attention really. But you would put your thrill plant in the center, you know, so something that's on a trellis or in this case we put a tomato cage in our grow container. Um, something like a tomato, pepper, eggplant, cucumber on a trellis. That can be your thrill plant. You can fill it out with basil, lettuce, bush beans, chard parsley, or kale. And then spilling plants could be something like sweet potato vines are used ornamentally all the time. And the vines are edible too, not just the sweet potato itself. You can cook those up like greens. Um, Thyme will spill over. Strawberry plants are really cute when they start falling out. Cascading cherry tomatoes can also be an option. You know, or here you got a nice example of a Three Sisters container garden. Now that's a pretty big scale, but you could have something like a sunflower or a corn plant in the middle, have your bush beans or vining beans climbing up the stalk as a trellis, and then you have your sweet potato plants or your squash plants around the bottom. And again, there's less information about fill, thrill, spill on vegetables.
Yeah.
So get creative with this and let us know how it works for you.
Hope and Christina, we have a question from Jude in the chat. Jude asks, could multiple herbs be planted in the same grow bag, or do they need to be kept separate?
Definitely. You can plant, especially if you have like a 10-gallon grow bag. I feel like that would be fine.
I think the more diverse your system is, the more resilient it is when it comes to resisting pest and disease and reducing competition between plants. You know, so you could put, you know, basil and parsley and cilantro together in one container for sure. And you could do that as an understory under some other taller plant like a tomato or pepper and eggplant. But I would think about some of them have different water and light requirements. So that's why I say basil, cilantro, and parsley could go in one container together because they like a good amount of sun and a good amount of water.
Yep.
But something like thyme, oregano, rosemary, lavender, I would put those in a different container that gets less water. Those are more Mediterranean style plants that like it dry.
And those I feel like get bushier too. So they might be better alone. But yeah, you could definitely do that. Trellis?
Don't get jealous of my trellis. So there are lots of different ways to trellis. And a trellis is simply any kind of device that you use to support your plants. And it's a really simple way to increase yields from your plants and to prevent disease. So a lot of plants like tomatoes or cucumbers or vining beans, climbing beans, are what we call indeterminate. The sky is the limit. The more you support them to grow, they will keep growing and they'll never stop. So the more support you give them, the farther they'll go, just like children, right? So, you know, you can do something really simple. I mean, I was lazy, so I found a tomato cage and I just put it in here. That's really the simplest thing. But if you don't have access to a tomato cage, you don't want to spend the money, you can use some of these other techniques. I mean, literally find 3 sticks in the woods, tie some string around them and make a tripod. You know, that's a pretty simple thing to do. And even just one stick with some zip ties or twist ties, that makes a big difference. But if you have plants that are touching the ground, it's going to increase their exposure to possible diseases that get transferred from stuff splashing up out of the soil onto the leaves.
Makes it more organized too.
Easier to harvest.
Yeah, tomatoes get crazy and vining, so having them supported is always nice to find the fruit.
Yeah, and to pruning, that's a whole other that's a whole other wormhole that we're not going to go into today. Okay, So organic pest and disease management, we do run a whole entire workshop that is just about this. And it's like a 90-minute workshop and it only touches the surface. So we're really going to try and redirect you towards maybe watching the archives of that video. So if you go to YouTube and look up Vines Gardens, you can find a playlist of all of our previous videos. If you can't find us on YouTube directly, go to vinesgardens.org/green thumb, and you can look at video recordings of all of our education workshops, including this one. This one will be up there within a week, thanks to Chris's support. But big thing, Hope mentioned that you want to put your plant in a place where you're going to be able to see it every day. You want it to be monitoring regularly. Like, especially since if you've only got containers, if you've got 5 containers and one of them gets attacked by a pest or disease, you've lost 20% of your crop in one go.
Yep.
So just, they say, there's no better fertilizer than a gardener's shadow. Just keep on checking your plants. And as you're monitoring, then you can see when a problem starts showing up and you can respond to it quickly. Prevention is really important. Plant health care, regular watering, proper sunlight, fertilizing with compost tea or seaweed tea, making your plant strong to begin with so it has a powerful immune system to fight off diseases when it is exposed. Having an acceptable threshold. So lots of vegetables, if you see any kinds of symptoms or diseases, it's not going to kill you to eat that plant, right? So if you're not selling your kale and there are some little nibbles on it from, caterpillars or aphids or something like that, you can still eat it and be just fine. Cucumber beetles are perfectly edible. They taste like cucumber. Right. So, a lot of these things, like, it's up to you what you feel is acceptable. It's not the end of the world. But of course, if you're selling, that's a whole other story. Yeah. So you need to think about, well, what are you willing to accept? Using physical barriers such as floating row covers or old sheets. Vines does sell season extension kits for an $8 to $10 donation. You can use that spun Agribond fabric and throw it over your plants in order to serve as a mechanical barrier against whitefly, aphids, potato beetles, any number of pests. You can also use insecticidal soap. We've demonstrated that in a previous video, but it's basically, a tablespoon of Dr. Bronner's soap, 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil, and you can just spray your leaves on the underside as well whenever you see any kind of insects. Yellow sticky traps are also a great tool. Something like aphids or spider mites, they're attracted to yellow, the color yellow. So you take a yellow card or an old piece, like an old Cheerios box, take some Vaseline and put it on there, put it at the base of your plant, and you'll see all of those insects are going to fly and get stuck on that yellow trap and not on your plant. You can also get a spray of neem oil that's a little more heavy duty. It is organic. It doesn't grow here, but it can grow in other places. You can use neem oil and kind of alternate. Diatomaceous earth is another great product that you can use. It's actually made from the shells of diatoms, which are these small insects, prehistoric kind of insect type creatures. I'm not doing good scientific justice, but it's sharp, but not to us. And so, like, if you see any kind of beetles or mealybugs attacking your plants, you sprinkle some of that diatomaceous earth around the base of the plant, and it actually cuts the exoskeleton of the plants and then of the insects, and they desiccate. They die. I put some photos here, kind of illustrations, of different kinds of insects you might see. Whitefly is very common if you're doing container gardens. you know, some of these are more kind of generic symptoms, botrytis, blight, spider mites. You'll see the very clear webbing. That's not a spider. You got to get it off there. Mealy bugs are just gross, you know, but you think about your specific crop. Again, it's so extensive.
Mhm.
The truth is that the more diverse what you're planting is, and the more care you give to it, the less likely are that you're going to wind up seeing any kinds of these pests. If you want to watch these videos, go to vinesgardens.org/green thumb, and we'll take a deep dive there.
Yeah.
Is that it?
No,
No,
there's one more.
can't be.
So
Oh, go ahead, Hope.
yeah, so this is what I mentioned earlier, our Build a Garden program. The applications are still open for the grow bags. So if you're interested, we do provide up to 10 grow bags for accepted applicants. You just have to live in the city of Binghamton, Johnson City, Edgewell, or Endicott. I hate that we have to make that restriction, but it's just due to our funding. And we would also provide seedlings if you're interested. So that's a really great way to get started, if you want.
And there should be, why is this not responding?
There you go.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I can't contain my enthusiasm.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Because I sent a bunch of, well, a couple of questions, and I don't think that you got them.
Where did you send them?
Evidently you didn't, because I heard you, that, I don't know, I went to the more, I have an iPhone, I went to the more button, and I said, it went to chat. I might, I'm not savvy at such things.
Sending to like Facebook chat or something by accident. But you know what, Sarah? So we're such a small group. What's your question?
It's not too hard. Let me think what they were now. Well, one thing was I bought I don't have any soil in my yard. It's all, for one thing, it's been condemned as lead. So I had, like, they made me cover it up.
I'm
So,
sorry to
but
hear that.
also, yeah, I have lead, and also, so I wouldn't grow anything, but I have containers. I have a garden. So I do have a garden down the street, but I'd like to have things near me so I can, like, a kitchen garden is what I want. So I'm hoping for. So anyways, I have a no light in my backyard either, because I've planted a lot of trees, but so I have, bricks and trees, but on my driveway, I can put a lot of, containers, and my neighbors do it. And I thought, okay, that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And so that would be great. And so I'm getting anxious because I have these plants that are getting, too big for their little containers, because for like seedlings. And so I had to do something. So I went to the store and I bought some soil, but I bought garden soil. And then I put compost, which I have a compost heap. Which isn't completely ready, but I put some in there. And however, it feels like when I watered it, and this is just a little while ago, it didn't seem like the water was going down. Like, I planted the tomato that was outgrowing its thing, so I don't know is that bad? Like, I don't know. It just seems like maybe that soil, garden soil, it's called garden soil. It's Miracle Grow garden soil.
Well,
I don't know.
It's soil, right? And
It's
so
soil.
You can work with that, but we don't recommend using just straight soil in a
I know. That's unfortunate that I did that.
Aeration.
Should I undo it?
So what you can do, how long ago did you transplant?
Today, just a little while ago. Today, I just was like,
you're fine. You're fine.
I just did it. So yeah, but I'm just worried that I like put the plant in like this heavy soil, and they're not going to be able to be watered.
So first of all, in other countries where people do not have access to perlite or coconut coir or
Stuff grows.
These things, people grow in containers directly in soil.
Okay.
So it does happen. It won't be as robust, and there's a higher risk of problems if you don't have proper drainage. So,
I have drainage. I just don't have, I think the soil is so, Is there anything I can do to help it now? Like, should I put some, I mean, it wouldn't entail me taking the plant out, which is actually like really a big tomato plant that I had to bury, 2/3 of it. And, but I don't know. If I should add something to it. Like, I can't stir it around, of course, because I already have the roots in there. I guess I'll be okay. Just
Yeah, so didn't you apply for grow bags?
yes, I did. I did twice. I did.
Okay, great. Yeah, so if we provide them to you, you can always transplant them.
Okay,
The grow
so
bag.
that would probably be what I would like to do, is transplant them, because
Yep.
I'm not happy
And
about the
you'll have
soil.
the perlite in it.
Yeah, they'll already have soil. Well,
Okay,
well,
that'll be
medium.
great. Have
And,
something else in it.
Yep.
All right, so that's what I'll do, and I won't worry about this one. I'll let it be for, it's just gonna be another week or two or something.
yeah, they'll be okay.
Okay, good. And I don't know if I had another question. I can't remember now, but I was having trouble hearing you, but now this is working fine. So that might have been my other question, but I guess that's the main thing. I think that's the main thing.
Hang on, it looks like we have some questions from Facebook.
Yeah.
Do you want to read it, Hope?
Yeah, it says, I want to know how to garden without spending money. What can we use around the house?
Use from around the house. Well, any kind of food grade container.
Yep. You can, like, if you have milk jugs, you can cut the top off of a milk jug, drill
Mhm.
some holes in the bottom.
Like tubs of margarine or buckets. Like if you have a bigger bucket, like Hope pointed out, from frosting or from soy sauce, or I see people using like jerry cans, like from cooking oil. As long as you put holes in the bottom of it to allow for drainage, and it's a food grade container, you can use it. And then if you want to get creative, you can make your own grow bag. If you've got, a free tote bag from,
That's smart.
from the supermarket or something.
Yeah, those reusable shopping bags, the fabric ones, you could use those.
I mean, those they're not as good as this, but they'll totally work.
Something that can hold soil that didn't have anything weird in it.
Like, and the recyclable bags from the supermarket, they should be food grade.
Yeah.
Because people are putting food in them. So, that's a good question, but there are plenty of things to do.
May I add something?
Okay.
I have gotten several, and I don't know how easy it is, but I've gotten several of those white icing bags, containers that are so good at like Price Chopper. Like, I just go and ask. I used to need them for my work, and so I would go and ask for them all the time. And you can get them, and they clean them for you too, so they're not full of sticky, greasy stuff. Yeah. So if somebody would like to use them, that's
a great tip.
Yeah. So asking at grocery stores, that's smart.
Yeah, it really worked. I only tried one store, but I'm sure any place we're happy to give them away.
Yeah.
Plastic pickle barrels.
Yep.
And they're big.
In the chat.
What's up?
Jude asks, I was thinking of trying potatoes in a grow bag. Would most varieties work for that?
Yep. Potatoes are great to start in grow bags.
Wow, I would have never thought. What an idea. I want to do that.
Yeah, they're a great way to.
Oh, wow. I never because I don't have enough room for potatoes normally. I was like a 4x10.
I mean, potatoes are fun to do in a grow bag. Sometimes you get grow bags that are designed specifically for potatoes. And what's nice about potatoes is that normally you mound them, and the more, like, every few weeks you add more soil, and then more potatoes grow out. And so maybe you start with a couple potatoes at the bottom of your container, and then you just keep on gradually adding more soil. And then harvesting from a grow bag is so much easier from harvesting in the soil. Because you gotta dig around and search.
You can use your hand.
Here you can literally, some of them they cut a little hole here, like with a zipper or a Velcro.
That's cute.
You just lift it out and you pull your potatoes out that way.
Oh, so you open it and get your potatoes.
And there's nothing like a fresh potato to me.
I know. I imagine that's true. I just have to try that.
Yeah.
Cool. You just have to cut the bag. to get them out.
Yep, you could do that, or you could just reach in and get them.
Mm-hmm.
You can do that too. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Either way works.
So
Cool.
somebody was asking from Facebook, what kind of soap do you use in the insecticidal soap? You can use any kind of dish soap.
Yeah, you can use like Dawn. Right?
Yeah, you can use Dove or Dawn or Dial. You know, but if you're really crunchy, you know, you could use some Castile soap like Dr. Bronner's. Then you know for sure it's ultra biodegradable.
That's what we'd use.
Mm-hmm.
Then Jude was asking, someone told me that herbs take on each other's flavors if you plant them near each other. Is that really true? I don't know.
I haven't heard that about herbs influencing each other. I do know that there are certain kinds of crops. So if you plant, let's say, basil or parsley around your tomato plants or your pepper plants, that reportedly changes the flavor of the tomato.
Really?
Yes, of the tomato or of the pepper. So that can work. I don't know. I haven't heard about herbs changing other herbs.
Yeah. Might have to try. Yeah. Is that it?
So well,
If
did
nobody,
we want to demonstrate planning this?
We could. We don't have to.
I have a quick question about mealybugs.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You said what to do. Like I have had them. I don't have them right now, but I've had them on my indoor like houseplants. And I think you said you can put diatomaceous earth. Is that really? You just put it on the ground?
You could put it on the
On
ground,
the,
sprinkle it directly on them. It's not going to harm the plant.
it
and it's
doesn't
not
harm
gonna
anything.
you.
It's fine. Just put it there in the mealy things. That's where they nest. Like that's where they grow their things. So I think as a kind of like preventative, I should put
Yeah.
it.
You can use it preventatively.
Maybe. Oh, that's such a good idea. Awesome.
Oh, mealybugs
Thank
are
you. That's awesome. Excellent. Thanks. Cool.
yeah.
I'll do that.
Cool.
They look like some kind of
Mm.
fungus, like growing on your plant, and then you come up close and then you see that it looks like a mealybug. And you can mechanically destroy some of these bugs too, especially on a container where it's really controlled.
Yep.
You know, put on some garden gloves and just crush them. Crush them or throw them in a bucket of soapy water. That'll get them too.
Mm. I went to each mealybug with a Q-tip and like used rubbing alcohol. It was ridiculously laborious, but it worked. Eventually, I had to cut back about half of each plant, but it's done.
Diatomaceous earth is a good.
I love that
but you
idea.
can't-
I'm gonna get some.
You can't find that like that. That's not the sort of thing that you can buy at the grocery store. You have to go to a nursery or online.
Maybe Amazon, probably.
Yeah. Sherry had a question. She said, this year I decided to try broccoli and did seeds in potting soil still inside. They are quite leggy now, about 3 inches. Is this normal? So what happens there is your source of light is too far away. So when we start seeds at the farm, we put when they're small, we put the lights, like the grow lights, pretty close to the plant, like very close. And that helps to make them not leggy, because they're leggy because they're reaching for the sun. That's why.
So
I mean, they're phototropic, right? They're growing towards the light, and if you see long leggy plants, it's they're reaching for light, and they're not finding it, right? It's not quite enough. And you could still maybe save those guys if you take them outside. I mean, what's nice is that a lot of these plants, they can grow what's called adventitious roots. Like their cells are not differentiated the same way that ours are. So if you bury the stem, you could have roots growing out from there. But if you plant it directly with that long leggy stem, it's gonna blow over and break.
Yep.
So my recommendation is just bury the stem.
And put them outside probably.
Yeah, and maybe try starting them from seed outside.
Yeah.
At this point, you might want to start another batch
The
out
next-
if you know it's going to get enough light.
Okay, thank you.
How do bushes do in grow bags? I want to transfer a small plastic potted hibiscus into a 7-gallon bag. So my recommendation would be that you do want a bigger bag for your hibiscus. I mean, you could transfer it there temporarily, but long term, that is not enough space for the roots of that plant. You probably want a 30-gallon bag for something like that.
Yeah. They get pretty big
But you can put it in a 7-gallon temporarily.
as it gets bigger.
Well, it's 6:30 on the dot. We contained our conversation within the allotted time.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Mhm. We're so glad that you folks were able to join us. We got some thumbs up in there.
I
Chris,
don't know
how
how
many
to do
people
that, but I
were?
would. I don't know how to do it, so, but just, that's my thumb
Yeah,
got
the
it,
real
yeah.
thumb, the analog. Well, folks, thank you so much for joining
Yes,
us.
Thank you. This was nice and fun. I
Mhm.
feel like I always
Thank you for
learned a
all
lot.
of the answers to all my questions.
You're
Absolutely.
welcome.
It was so nice meeting you.
Yeah. I feel like I always learn a lot on these also, which is nice.
Yeah, and you get us to think about things in a new way.
Yep.
Well, thank you, thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you, everyone.
I'm gonna have containers. I'm pretty excited about it. I might do potatoes.
Yeah, you should.
Do it.
Cool.
I
Yeah,
guess on you can get online. You can get grow bags that have a hatch for potatoes.
That's what
Yes.
Christina was saying. That's so
Oh.
cute.
Oh, cool. I could make my
Oh.
own, because I'm just gonna get the ones, I'm gonna get the ones from Vines, and I can make my own little hatch.
Yeah.
With a string,
yeah,
you know, sew
Let's
it.
see how
I'll
it
sew
goes.
it. I can sew it.
There you go.
Yeah, it depends how
But
good of
that's
a
a very
seam,
good idea,
seamstress
though.
or
Just make
seamster
a
you are.
hatch and then sew it back up. I can do that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
not hard.
Cool.
Awesome. That's really good. Thank you for that idea.
Yeah.
I love that potatoes. I've never grown potatoes.
Yeah. Well, we'll be rooting for you.
Thank you. Thank you. So thank you so much.
All right. Bye.
Thank you,
All
folks.
right,
Have a good
bye-bye.
night.
Thank
See you later.
And thank you,
Bye-bye.
Gabriel and Chris for
Yes.
facilitating.
Thank you.
I'm going to end meeting for all, and then this is going to save to either Chris's computer or my computer. Let's see.
We'll see.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Chris. Thanks for your help.
Bye.